You are now listening to Stranger Times.
There's a whole fleet of them. What's on the ASA? My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Oh, big man. It's rotating.
Hello and welcome to Stranger Times. I'm your host, Jacob Carson, and today we are joined by Vinnie, creator and host of the Disclosure Team. So first of all, man, how are you doing?
I'm really good. Thank you very much for having me, Jacob. It's a pleasure.
Hey man, pleasure's mine. I've been watching your stuff on YouTube and you've kind of kept me in the know on Instagram from the start, really. I like your like breaking news little posts and everything. It's been like really helpful for like people that don't really know what's going on. It's very good to like stay on top of everything. So
Hey, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, my Instagram page has gone through a few transformations over the last few months due to the current climate of what's going on and so much news and information coming out. So yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you appreciate it.
yeah, no, it's been pretty crazy because it's felt for like the longest of time like it's kind of been more of a like a fringe topic, and everyone's kind of like there's been a few people like communities and stuff that are interested in it, but it hasn't been like mainstream. And it just feels like the last couple of months it's been full on. Like there's almost the amount of news stories that you'd post about in one day would be like what it was a month or two ago kind of thing for the whole month. So it's nuts.
Yeah, no, it's incredible how it's changed. I mean, we really saw the change coming in sort of towards the end of 2017 when To the Stars Academy launched, and
Yeah.
Tom DeLonge, Lou Elizondo, Christopher Mellon, all those guys came out, and then it's really just ramped up in the last 6 to 12 months massively. So it's been great to see it lose its stigma and become talked about in the mainstream without the too many X-Files theme tunes and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. And I'd say even in the UK as well, it's had a bit of a better approach, especially with how they're reporting on it with articles and stuff, because it's always been quite a hard, I don't know what it's like with your family dynamic, but it's very hard for me to bring this subject up at like a family meal or something. But I've had the last couple of weeks them sending me articles being like, what's this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing like the Instagram thing, not for that long, to be honest. And then I didn't speak to, I mean, I've got a brother who I speak to all the time, but then when it comes to like parents and other people within the family, I literally hadn't spoken to him about it. And literally a couple of months ago, I just brought it up randomly in conversation, and they just kind of brushed it off like, oh, okay. And then they've kind of kept a close eye on it. And now I think they realize, like, wow, you're actually involved in this. Okay. And then, as you say, like my dad just started sending me articles and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Yeah, no, it is nuts. And it's funny because I don't know about you as well, but like when you first start doing it, people think, oh, is he going down the rabbit hole? Is this it kind of thing? Have we like lost Vinny? But then very quickly it's like, no, he's just reporting on it. He like understands it. He's researching it. It's like, and you're like taking it seriously. It's not just a conspiracy theory, is it anymore? It's like a
Well,
serious
that's
thing
the
that we should be
thing.
looking into.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I've been down the rabbit hole personally for a decade plus at least.
Yeah.
But again, kept it very quiet to myself. It was
Yeah.
something I did late at night on my own, didn't talk about it, just had my head buried in, whether it be documents
Mm.
or anything like
The
that.
YouTube algorithm doesn't help as well when you leave it on at night.
Yeah, no. Oh God, that's a whole nother wormhole.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I basically just started filling my hard drives with stuff I came across, because I always found that whatever I learn, I always wanted to cross-reference it with something. And that kind of leads to the reason why I started Disclosure Team, which was primarily started on Instagram, was just to kind of log stuff for me that wasn't just in the deep bowels of my hard drives. It was something I could just click on when I'm browsing my personal Instagram and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then, all of a sudden, I just noticed a few people subscribing, following, should I say, and yeah, kind of went crazy from there, really.
Yeah, no, that's cool though, because it helps because I find as well with like a lot of content that is especially on Instagram, there's not like that much new age kind of like reporting content on it. It's either like an already known like news kind of cast or company, or
Yeah.
then it's more so like the crazy drawings and ancient alien stuff and just all of like the ridiculous stuff that there is. So it's cool that you're doing that, and I can see why loads of people liked it too, because obviously it's a good place for them to go. And for anyone that hasn't seen the posts, they're very like bold and clear, and you know it when it's a disclosure team post based on how it looks and stuff. So
that's cool, man. And that was
good.
kind of an accident. So, sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, that was an accident because I started the page and I think I called it something like Disclosure 20. Originally, it was Disclosure 2020.
Nice.
I was like, I started in 2020, threw a few posts together, and then it kind of 2021 came around. I was like, I think I hit around 1,000 followers in January. I was like, this is going on a little bit past a year. And then all of a sudden hit 1,000 followers and it was just going nuts just every single day. And I was posting a lot of like sighting videos without really researching them or anything. And I was like getting so many people commenting, going fake and blah, 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 blah. And I was just going, oh God, I can't be doing this. I need to bring out my research head again. And so I started flipping it around, changed the name to Disclosure Team, took away the year because this could be going on for many years.
Yeah.
And really got my research head down, which is something I'd done years before for myself. And so dropped the sightings thing and just started looking at the current climate, comparing what was happening now with stuff that's happened in the past by going through all the declassified documents that have been released. And I don't just mean in the US, I mean across all European countries, Scandinavian, Brazil, Australia, things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's completely alienated a lot of my personal life, but hey.
Yeah, no, I can agree with you on that one, because even as well, like what you want to talk about too, because it consumes your life. I've noticed sometimes when I'm like with my partner, I'm like, oh, I'm talking about aliens a little bit too much, or oh, I'm talking about this phenomenon a little bit too much, because I'm the kind of person that will sit there for hours and just be like, what could it be? What does this mean? What does that mean? Or if I learn something new, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see how that connects to that, but what does that mean for the overall thing? And you can just keep going and going and going, and like it just consumes you.
Definitely, man. I'm lucky. Like I said, my brother is the only one in my life that I have always spoken to this about. And I don't think if I didn't have him, I think it would have been a hell of a lot harder.
Yeah.
We're identical twins as well, so we've always had really similar interests,
Okay,
and
cool.
so that's helped me. But yeah, I mean, all my friends now are pretty much online friends, like
Yeah.
especially in this community. But hey, I got quite used to that because I started during the pandemic as far as putting stuff out online, social media, YouTube, and all that.
Yeah.
So I seem to have grown into this whole new lifestyle based on lockdown.
No, I'm kind of similar, because I like graduated from uni, couldn't find a job like everybody else that graduates from uni, because I graduated with like a marketing and like design background, couldn't find anything. So because well, what can I consume myself with? And then just as I started like massively getting into science and all this kind of stuff and like space travel and space exploration, got a job, but then lockdown happened. So I was kind of still in the same situation. And I kind of just went full circle. I realized that like, even in the scientific community, we didn't have all the answers, because kind of like growing up, I didn't expect somebody to have all the answers, but I was kind of like we must know kind of like what we're doing. And then like the older I got, it was like, we really don't know what we're doing. And for me, it's kind of like gone full circle now. And like, I'm here and I'm like, I'm totally just open now to hearing what people have got to like suggest, what people have got to talk about, as long as there's like either some form of evidence or it's more of a discussion and it's not an opinion. And I've found that's kind of like what a lot of people are in this community too. And that's really cool, because it's fun to actually make friends with people that want to talk about it too, because you don't feel like a pain to them, like you say, they want to have those conversations.
I completely agree, man. I mean, I think one thing that I realized as well with the transition of my page on Instagram is going from doing all the sightings and stuff to really reporting on the current climate and really digging into the government side and the military side and speaking to people behind the scenes is I'm actually going to say now, I'm going to kind of contradict myself because it's almost worse in a way now, because I get people telling me that, oh, well, we know aliens are here. We know this, we know that. And it's like, hang on a minute. I'm very evidence based and there's very little evidence for this or for that. that's kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it's really pushed me to research harder. Um, but I think I've learned as well in the past few months to counter their opinions and claims. And the thing is, then they are opinions and stuff like that, and that's okay for people to have opinions, but I struggle when people really push their opinions as factual, and that's what I try and portray to people. And now, instead of going in like aggressively, or like not so much aggressively, I've never been aggressive, but argumentatively, I'll just be like, hey, it's great that you have that opinion, but for me, I need to dig deeper and find evidence and proof and stuff like that. So yeah, I've become this really nuts and bolts evidence-based researcher, which is great. I mean, I'm from a scientific background myself. I studied astrophysics
Oh,
10 years
awesome.
ago. So it really did come from my love of astronomy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
See, my main interest that kind of got me into like all of this was the kind of tie-in was like between the Fermi paradox and the Great Filter, and it kind of just being like, well, the universe is so big, there are so many exoplanets, like like even the fact that we here means that like it's possible.
yeah,
But I was kind of always on like the fence of life probably definitely exists in the universe, but maybe it hasn't come to Earth yet, or it has, but we weren't here when it did, or whatever kind of thing. But when you start like seeing stuff like the Nimitz like incident and stuff like that, that's like becoming into the mainstream media, it's like, well, hang on a minute, this is very interesting. Now we've got like fighter jet pilots having like observations and talking about what their data's showing them. And I'm the same as you. I'm not like the kind of person to like come for anyone, but it is quite infuriating when you have like scientists and stuff that are going on the news and just kind of like bashing the topic.
oh man,
And it's like they're probably not even allowed in the rooms to see this data or to have those discussions, and they're literally just talking from like an egotistic standpoint.
I completely agree. And we've seen it for quite a few years with many of the big scientists. We saw it here in the UK with Brian Cox,
Yeah.
who I've been a fan of for a long time, going back to probably 2011, 2012, when he started appearing on the BBC doing all his shows. And he was very standoffish when anybody brought up ET, aliens, or anything with him. But I think we've seen him come around in the past few months, as we have a few other scientific minds. But I mean, the standout right now, I think everyone will agree, is Neil deGrasse Tyson, who, again, I've got a lot of respect for the guy and what he does through astronomy and all that kind of thing. But the way he's going, he's not making any new friends.
Yeah, no, because I'd agree with you, because people like Sam Harris and stuff that have come around, it's just cool to see, because it's also like really refreshing to hear like scientists talking about it. Because I love it even when like Lex Fridman does an episode and he kind of brings up extraterrestrial life, because I could sit there for hours and just listen to him. And I loved the episode that he did with Sam Harris just before Sam Harris came out and started talking about the subject. And even then, Sam Harris, he's not like saying we need to talk about it, but he's just talking about it from like the kind of idea of, is it possible? And it's just so interesting to like hear those kinds of people that have like knowledge in those areas to kind of like come out and talk about it, because I think that's what we need too. We need like all sorts of minds approaching the topic. And I think that's why it's cool when anybody kind of decides they want to do something in this community, because everyone's like, yeah, go for it. You might have something to offer.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And over the last few months, I've realized, leading up to the UAPTF report, I was very clear in my mind that I was going to set my expectations low, not expect anything from them. I knew they were trying their best.
Yeah.
But I knew with COVID and the 180-day limitations, the understaffing, underfunding issues that they had, that it wasn't going to equate to much.
Yeah.
I knew that going forward, it was going to need to be in the hands of the scientific community. And I'm a big proponent for the current institutions that are studying it, like the SCU, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. I've been following them for a few years, and I had a discussion with Rich Hoffman, one of the executive board members, last week. And that's where my sort of focus is going right now, is to speak to these scientists where they feel able to talk about it, away from the stigmatization and all the kind of negative sort of aspects of wanting to risk their careers and things like that. And I think we're seeing quite quickly that a lot of scientists are really picking up on this subject, starting to toy with it a little bit. Like, maybe my job and my career is not going to be on the line if I touch on this subject, and I think that's a huge step.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. And even just for like what implications it has for just humans on Earth, like if we change like the mindset and you have these kind of minds like approaching these topics, it could change how humans are living in like 50 years, like drastically, like multi-planetary species, renewable energy, like everything, like almost kind of like a digital utopia, but for whatever you want to think your like utopia is. And it's just nuts that we're just kind of sitting on it, and or it's so compartmentalized that if anybody does get to work on it or anybody does get to talk about it, it's only like a specific area of it and they don't know the full picture, or there's no cooperation between like governments and stuff. But yeah, no, I'd agree with you. It's slowly changing, and you can see that even like on social media with how even just like social media influencers and stuff are approaching it. Because I'm also noticing like a lot more like celebrities and musicians and stuff kind of coming out and talking about this topic, or talking about like the whole conscious topic, even with like psychedelics and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's huge, man. I think that's a great thing as well. People really are quick to slam celebrities when they talk about it, and I don't think that's right, because their audiences are so vast, so huge, that even just to bring the subject into the minds of people that may be new to it, with an output of, say they've got 50 million followers and they start
Yeah.
talking about UFOs in any aspect, as long as it's not derogatory or negative, it's just they're just talking about it, then it's going to open it up to so many new people, and I think that's only going to be beneficial. And I'm glad that you said then 50 years time, as far as this technology and stuff, because I know a lot of people expect that if we get acknowledgement of this technology and that it will happen overnight, and it really won't. It will be at least, well, again, in my opinion, it'll be around 50 plus years till it really gets implemented into our world, because we're still battling against the big one percenters, the old guard, who are the oil conglomerates, the petrodollar people, and that. So it's going to take a massive transition period, but we need it to start soon. So
I wonder
yeah,
because something that I've always found quite interesting about like the internet age, I guess, is like those generations that have like grown up with it. Everybody's got so used to having information like instantly, or
yeah,
like whatever they want instantly. And I think I might be like butchering this sentence, like this saying now, but I think they say something like, "Doesn't like a 16-year-old in America have more in common with a 16-year-old in Iraq than they do with a 50-year-old in America, just based off like ideologies and stuff in the world?" Because both people have like grown up on the internet and they can kind of understand it. And I think you see that a lot with like the internet kind of
absolutely.
generation, because instead of them growing up just being localized to their area and, well, because the weather's always fine and everybody's got jobs, we don't need to worry. It's kind of more moved to this approach where it's like, well, I might be okay, but I'm seeing online that people in Syria aren't, or I might be okay, but I'm seeing like people in China aren't. And I think people are like realizing that, and they're kind of, but because they also want like that instant
Yeah,
change, everybody's kind of getting worked up, and you're seeing all these people now kind of like snowballing, where I think the way to go is to like create content, because you can kind of just outweigh all of the people that are, if you want to say, suppressing it or wanting to control the narrative. And I think that's really interesting, because that's kind of like a little bit of a nuanced thing, which I don't think people that are currently like doing the stuff kind of get as much credit as they should for.
no, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's a good thing that 16-year-olds have got stuff in common with 16-year-olds in Iraq or wherever around the world. I think it kind of brings everyone in a kind of unified area where it doesn't matter where you're from or what country. And I think that's what's been needed in this world for decades, if not
Yeah.
hundreds of years. My thing, the thing I will look back on is I'm of an age where I grew up without the internet, and it was not until I was in my 20s when the internet came about. So I feel like I've got the 50-50 balance of having to actually do research and work
Yeah.
in a library maybe, or going to find information or talk to people, and then the second half of my life, access to the internet. And I think that's a great balance. And obviously kids these days, 16-year-olds, have always had the internet. So it's it's a tough one. It's great that everyone can get information, but I feel sometimes it may stop people from actually holding information in their brain, because why bother storing it in your brain when you can just log on and 2 minutes later you've found it online? So
Yeah, and
yeah,
it kind of leads to that whole armchair scientist thing as well,
yeah.
doesn't it?
Oh man, and
Yeah.
that's what I see a lot of. So
Yeah, that is the dark side of social media, I guess, because like
yeah,
it's just doing its job. It's like you'll say something, and whether or not that is like true or your opinion, even if it's a bad opinion, it will connect you with people that agree with you. It then becomes an echo chamber. You're like, yeah, I'm right, because these people are saying to me that I'm right. And then occasionally you might hit the trending wave, become like a viral post, and then you get cancelled because actually what you were saying wasn't correct. And
yeah.
it's just a vicious circle. It's I hope that they figure that out, because like you're saying, there is a lot of positives to the internet, but they need to figure out ways to kind of
But do you know what? Do you know what? I think it makes me work harder though, because if I put out a piece of information and someone comes back at me in that, and I'm confident that it's true, or it's close to being the truth because of it's an area that I've researched, then it's kind of good, because they really test me to then work harder and go forward and really make sure that maybe the next time I put out an even more solid piece of information, or at least give a backup as to why I think something. I mean, I'm very, very cautious about giving over personal opinions, because when it comes to ufology and the UFO UAP subject, no one really has the answers.
yeah. And if
But
they do run,
oh, absolutely, man, run to the hills, big
yeah,
time. So it's when we're really digging into that grey area, you know, I'm confident in what I do, in my work, in my research, in them grey areas. And that's why I think I've stopped being so responsive to people that have different views, because do you know what? Maybe one day I'll be vindicated. Maybe I'll be completely wrong, but I'm willing to accept that. But I'm confident in the time that I put into this subject, and I think you know that's all I can do really. What else can I do? I can't access things that I can't access, and
yeah.
so
Do you think that the way it's being like perceived in the United Kingdom is changing? Because obviously we spoke a little bit about at the beginning with it kind of having this response where I always find that the UK kind of just do what America's doing. Like if
oh yeah.
America just comes out and they're like, we're looking into it. The UK won't come out and be like, we're looking into it, but they'll just report on it that America are looking into it and whether or not they should too. But do you feel that it's changing? Because I noticed even in like the last couple of weeks, and it might have just been because the report was on, but even like with the astronauts and stuff that were coming on there, like his name Timothy Peake and that, they were just open to it and they were talking about it, and it felt like the first time anyway that you could have a discussion on like a British street and people wouldn't think you were like crazy because it was kind of like in the media, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes complete sense. Unfortunately, I think it is due to the ramping up and the lead up to the UAPTF report that a lot of the British media jumped on it. I mean, we saw the what I call the gutter press jumping on it earliest, which is the Sun, the Daily Star, things like that. And
They're from Mars.
well, the thing is that they're copy and paste media. They don't research it
Yeah.
themselves and then write articles. They'll read articles in the States 2 weeks beforehand, pretty much just rearrange a few words and put it out with a bit of a sensationalist headline, which is expected. So it doesn't really bother me. We saw a few articles coming out closer to the June 25th date from some of the more respectable publications. And that was a good sign, but we are always hanging on the coattails of the US. We do that in every aspect of life when it comes to our relationship with that bigger country. It's been happening for so long. Um, yeah, maybe I've seen it a little bit in the public domain where people are talking about it, like, but they read into it based on these sensationalized headlines where, hey, we're getting disclosure on June 25th, and of course we're not. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's irrelevant to my work. And I tell people if they come to me with that kind of thing, look, we're in a big sea change. We're in a big like paradigm shift, but it's still the early days of a journey that is going to take quite a bit more time.
Yeah.
So, you know,
What does full disclosure mean to you?
full disclosure, I mean, it's different for everyone,
Yeah.
obviously. And I mean, that is a very hard question, but I will
Just
try
off
and answer
off
it.
off the top of your head.
To me, I mean, we're already in it. We're already in disclosure because we're talking about the government in the US admitting to the fact that they know there is something going on which they cannot explain.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a military that is the biggest and best in the world that are having serious issues and have been having serious issues for quite some time now. I mean, I look at the 2019 Navy reporting system where all their pilots and that have been told to actually report sightings and things. And then you get Ryan Graves saying, well, we've been seeing them every day and they cannot be explained. They're doing maneuvers that are way beyond any technology that we can do. The 5 observables that Lou Elizondo and that talk about. Then, you know, um, yes, I'd like to know what they are. I think the government would like to know what they are because I truly believe that they actually don't.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
We go back to Roswell and the talk of extraterrestrials crashing in a ship and they recovered the bodies. Yes, that may well have happened. I'm quite for that. But in this day and age, I think a lot of the sightings aren't as simply explainable as a group of entities that have crossed the vastness of space to get here at warp speed, at light speed. I think we're going more into the realm of quantum physics and multidimensional kind of things. That's kind of where my focus is at, and yeah, I'm still as in the dark now as I was then, but you know,
That whole like quantum like physics, quantum mechanics realm just blows my mind. We've tried to like talk about it occasionally on another podcast I do called The Infinite Void. And
mm,
every single time I just come away with more questions than I do like when I enter. Like it is truly baffling because it could mean something so profound like consciousness genuinely warps reality, or it could mean something like completely the other direction where it's like there is no free will and it's actually reality getting you to think that to make it do it, and all this kind of crazy stuff, and it just keeps going on and on and on, and it's like, oh, okay, breathe.
it is. And I think what is I still hang on to as well is that we still see a lot of information that's been coming into the public domain as far as videos and evidence are coming not from the government. They're coming from people like Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp,
Yeah.
who get such a hard time for doing what they're doing. And I don't agree with that. I'm a real proponent for that. If they're getting military people coming to them with footage and information, they are then going out with that information behind the scenes, doing due diligence and getting it examined before they put it out. Maybe it's not that impressive when you see it, but it's evidence that we wouldn't get otherwise because it would still be kept within the realms of the DoD and the Pentagon and that. And that's going to be happening a lot more, in my opinion. I've seen it. I've talked to people. There are things happening right now.
How
Um,
exciting.
yeah, I got a couple of friends working on a couple of projects that are very interesting. There was an announcement made today from a good friend of mine on Instagram about some footage that's been leaked from the Homeland Department of Homeland Security. So yeah, it's kind of a little exclusive for you. There
There
are
you go.
things coming soon. So yeah.
Exciting. Everyone will have to head over to Disclosure Team because I'm sure you guys will be reporting on it
Oh, very much so.
as it's happening. So like what's kind of your end goal then for Disclosure Team? Do you want to be like the name for this kind of like media and this topic, or is your goal more so kind of just like get this out to the public, make more people
Yeah.
more aware, kind of not like wake everybody up, but kind of just make sure everybody's aware of what's going on?
Well, that's the thing. I never had a I never had a goal in this. I was putting out this information at the start of the year with very few followers and things like that, and I never wanted to be known in this subject. I mean, I think I got to about March, April. I had never shown my face, and I was just about to hit 10,000 followers, and I was like, I don't want to be. I don't want any credit for anything. I'm
Yeah.
literally sharing my work, my evidence, my research with people through a social media platform. And even then, it was you can't really share your work across Instagram because it's so limited to what
Yeah.
a few photos and a small description doesn't do the work behind the scenes any justice. But then I think when I came to like realize people were saying, we want to know who you are. You've been doing such great work. So I started showing my face, really started going on these doing Instagram lives. as soon as I did that, it kind of opened me up to a lot of people wanting to talk,
Yeah.
but also from the UFO world, the community, other researchers. And then that's when I made friends with people like Mr. Max Moskowitz from Holland and the UAP Media UK guys, and then other people in the US. And that's when I started forming these collaborations. And I mean, here we are now in July, and I'm working with a lot of them behind the scenes and doing YouTube channels and shows with them. So yeah, to me, that always wanted to kind of remain anonymous, and now I'm kind of out there big time.
No, that's awesome. That's really cool. So basically, it's just kind of get everybody to know about it as much as they can, and kind of share the research out across all the
Yeah,
collaborations and stuff that you do.
I'm not asking anybody to take what I say as gospel. I'm just saying, please be aware that I've done my due diligence. I've gone away, I've done the research, I've put some information out. If you don't believe it, hey, that's great. No worries.
Oh, that's
Um,
fair.
I'm not asking anyone for anything. I don't want anything. If they've got their beliefs, great. If they have information from elsewhere that contradicts what I say, fine, that's great. I really don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm just here to show that I'm doing some work, and if anybody likes it, great. That's it. And also, I like to give people a starting point. I'll put out a post maybe with some information, but then it's up to them if they want to dig into that maybe specific case some more. I'm not here to spoon feed everyone like babies. And I know that may sound a little bit harsh, and I'm sorry. I don't mean it like that, but I only have so many hours in the day that sometimes I don't have enough time, but I'll give people real good leads. So if they really want to look at something, they know where to start, you know?
Yeah, no, that's fair. For me, I literally made this podcast because I was like, I want to talk to these people that I'm watching. They're talking about really cool things, and the only way I'm going to be able to talk to them is if I make a podcast. So I'll make a podcast and I'll talk to them.
Dude, I love it, man. I love this podcast so much,
And
man.
that's kind of been where we've been going. But so a little bit off topic, but have you ever had a sighting or an experience? Because I've found that people, when I've asked people in the UK, it's very hit or miss. So I'm interested.
I'm afraid this is a big miss, man. I've never really seen anything. There's been many occasions where I've been late at night, maybe after a party or something, back in my 20s or 30s, when I've looked up at the sky and I've seen something. I'm like, what on earth is that? But then me, with a kind of bit of a science mind, I've always had all those apps, those star maps and ISS tracking apps and that. So I
Yeah.
literally just have always pointed my iPhone at the sky and gone, oh, look, it's just the ISS crossing, or it's this small meteor shower or something. So I've always been able to put it down to a prosaic explanation. So yeah, I'm gutted, man. And people, all my friends are across
Yeah.
UFO Twitter, YouTube, and that are always ribbing me because they've had sightings. They're like, dude, you're not a sighting. I'm like, I know, man.
I'm literally exactly the same as you. Like I want to see one, and I think
Oh, me
I think
too.
sometimes like I'm almost manifesting it too much. Maybe they're like, this guy wants to see it too much. We'll kind of stick away. But I'm kind of the same because I grew up like reading all like the sci-fi comics, watching sci-fi
Yeah,
films, and even like into like Marvel and all of the different worlds and races and stuff that they have. And like
absolutely.
I was just always into it, but I kind of like put it on the back shelf when I was a teenager because I got like into music and like playing instruments, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I've returned slowly back to it. But like now I even do like astrophotography, and I'll sit outside all night for like 6 hours just looking at the stars, and I won't see a thing. And occasionally, if I'm like not really concentrating, I'll catch a Starlink or something and I'll start freaking out for a minute. But I'm like you, I'll get the star tracking app out and I'll be like, ah, damn it, it's a satellite.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. Always gets me. I just get that little like buzz of excitement. Like, is this the night? Is this the night? Is that it? No, it's not
this
it.
is kind of like why I'm interested in this whole like conscious like initiation slash CE5 thing. I know CE5 gets like a bad rep because of who's in charge of it,
Yeah.
but the whole like idea of like consciously initiating contact, because I think this is something that engaging the phenomenon's like really big on, and
Oh yeah.
the Unity
Shout out
project. Yeah,
James. Love James. You have Project Unity, Jay. Definitely shout out to those guys.
I've got a James coming on for a future episode, so anyone listening, get ready for that. But yeah, I'm interested in that because to me, it's like what you're saying, like the whole idea of like quantum mechanics and the whole quantum realm and everything. It has like big implications, and I'm also interested in the sightings that people have where like they're not sure if their mind created it or if it actually was there. Like
Yeah,
if it's just like appeared to them and nobody else saw it, kind of thing. Like that interests me too.
it does me too. I mean, I've always been a very nuts and bolts researcher, and it's only recently I've been looking into that kind of conscious side of things. But again, we all associate CE5 with Dr. Greer, and I, I I know a lot. There's a lot of controversy there. I don't want to go into that right now, but I'm good friends with a guy called Tyler who runs a page called Contactor on Instagram, and he's very much into that. And so I'd recommend people go and check that out if they want a starting point for CE5. Very reputable guy.
Because I have like tried a similar thing too. Like when I've been out doing like my astrophotography and stuff, I'll sit there and I'll be like, right, okay, I'll sit here for a minute. I'll imagine where I am on the planet. We'll like zoom out like a Google Earth kind of thing. We'll do all this kind of stuff, but no, just not for me yet. So I think maybe I'm gonna have to like go to one of these events, do it with some people or something, and try it out.
Maybe, yeah. But again, just speak to people online or people that are into it, because they don't force it on you. Like you've got to pay $13 or whatever for an app and stuff like that. Because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
everyone individually may manifest this thing themselves with their own methods and stuff. There's no one way of doing it. There can't be. I mean, again,
Yeah.
it's very new to me, but if there's any scientific reasoning behind it, then I think it's going to become an individual thing. It's going to be based on way more than just follow this one protocol and you'll do it. I think that's ridiculous, personally. But
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I think there's probably something in it as well to like mindfulness. I can imagine the average person's probably not got like enough control over their like self-being to be able to like do it. And that's not me be like me being mean. Like I've tried to like practice mindfulness and stuff. I'm getting a little bit
yeah,
better at it, but it is hard. Like I'll lose distraction all the time. And I can imagine it's quite a skill to like sit there and really focus on where you are and try and do that stuff.
dude.
So I'm interested in it, but I have
Yeah,
no idea on what to do with it.
that's the thing. It's good to be interested, though. Just show that interest, I think, is a big step in the first place. Because, like I said, I'm very nuts and bolts. I look at documents, evidence, data. So to then think about like what a lot of people consider the woo factor, I think you've got to kind of be open to other aspects, even if it's not something that you fully believe in and things like that. I think it's worth it in this day and age when everything's still on the table. Be open, man. That's all I can say.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you. I think as well, something else that I've noticed with everybody that's online, it works out better for you if you are open. Like all of the people that are creating content, the ones that have been like their original selves from the start, and like I'm here because I'm interested in this, or I'm here and I'm going to talk about this. They're the ones that have stuck around as well. Like there's a lot of people that will come in with a like a certain motive or something,
Yeah.
try it, but everybody catches on very quickly, and
Yeah.
it kind of becomes, oh, that person's got this opinion kind of thing. Where have you heard of that and stuff like that? But it's also interesting because those kind of people too also end up on like the news and crazy talk shows.
Oh
And then
man. Yeah.
everybody's sitting there and it's like, yeah, well, said this. He's like, well, he was also on Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, but I think as well, if you look at this community, which I'm very, very blessed to be a part of now, whether it be across Instagram, especially across UFO Twitter, and even into YouTube, there is a very tight knit community that I'm lucky of to been welcomed into. I hope that it's because, well, two reasons. One, that I've put in the work and people appreciate that, but also that I'm a nice person. That I've always been very honest, open, and I've always been myself as well. And I feel like I get a lot of love for that. And I think that would be my advice to anybody is, even if you have views on a different area in ufology, be open to other aspects. Don't come on claiming that you know this, you know that you've debunked this or debunked that.
Yeah.
Just talk to people and be real, man. Show a bit of love and no negativity and stuff. It goes a long, long way.
No, I'd agree with you. I think open-mindedness is key. I think, and people will want to collaborate with you too if you're open-minded. Like if you're the kind of person that is willing to even hear what the other person's got to say, even if it's an idea or if it's their research or if it's more so an opinion that they want to force on you. Even if you're like willing to just listen to it, you don't have to, like, as you're saying, be mean to their face or anything and call them out for it. You just take that information away with you and do what you want with it too. And I think that would be much more healthier for everybody to do. Like, when it's kind of like when I asked you, like, what is your idea of like full disclosure? I think the real thing would be for like humanity to kind of just be like a little bit more accepting, maybe understand that there are other species or we're not the most intelligent or whatever it needs to be, but kind of just, and now I'm probably going to sound a little bit hippie-ish, like, oh yeah, one world, we all need to come together. But
dude,
at the same time, like, we do, like, if
that's exactly it.
Yeah,
sorry
like,
to interrupt, I'm very, very big on that point, and that is really the end goal, is just stop all the war, stop all the BS infighting in this world.
Yeah, like, and as well, if you really want to become, like, if you want to spread out to the stars, you got to do it. You can't become like a multi-planetary species whilst you're still falling out with each other on the first planet. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to do it right, because it's just not going to happen. Like, we have to resolve our differences to like move on, kind of thing. It always makes, I don't know, do you watch Rick and Morty?
I have a little bit. I struggle with it, to be honest, a little bit.
That's fair. There's only one episode that really makes me laugh, and it's just they find this planet that's inhabited by a species of snakes, but this species of snakes haven't become multi-planetary because they're too busy fighting each other, because there's one black snake and one white snake. And he's like, how silly are these snakes? If they just combined their technologies, they'd be able to get to their other planet, but they're fighting over that technology. And it's like, that's literally humans.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If we talk about like trying to be multi-planetary and things like that, and you look at people like Elon Musk, who I have a lot of respect for, but wouldn't their money and technology and, you know, need to change the world and push things forward be better here on Earth first? Put your money into things that will make the human race better before we then go into space. Like, let's sort it out here before we then take our wars to Mars, because we inhabit Mars and we suddenly get 1 million people there. There'll be two factions fighting on Mars. I mean,
I often, this is like a little bit of out there speculation, but I often imagine, like, when humanity does actually get a settlement on Mars, or whenever we do get all of our stuff together and we actually do it, I can imagine, like, because the technology and everything will be used there to like build it, it'll all be like renewable, it'll all be like sustainable. I can imagine there being like a shift where, for the sake of it, we'll call them Martians by then. They'll be like, Earth still hasn't learned from their ways, they're still polluting. And I just wonder how that's going to go down, because obviously, like, Mars will be fully sustainable because it'll have to be if we're going to build it. And I just wonder if people on Earth will never really change if we do that, like you're saying, like, if we do spread before we fix our differences. Will Earth just always kind of be like the redneck town of the solar system? It's like, well, these are all the people that don't believe that there is a universe or don't believe that there's all this stuff have kind of stayed there. And will everybody else that's kind of like into innovation and progression, everything, will they kind of spread out? But that's just some crazy sci-fi talk.
But even then, if you get like that Earth have kind of, the people left on Earth may feel left behind. They see these Martians, as you say, living that better life with sustainable energy and stuff. Then maybe they'll want to wage war on the Martians, because we want your technology, and we're never going to get out of this solar system if we just keep waging war for every little step that we take outside. It needs to be happen here first on Earth. So Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, I love watching your launches and stuff, but come on, man, with those billions, especially the billions you made during the pandemic, just throw some humanitarian projects out there that will really make a difference.
The one thing that I do like about Elon Musk is I like what he said in his interview about why he was doing the Mars thing, and he was saying that like Tesla and Solar City and all that is like his plan A. That's like we'll try and fix the planet, we'll shift them over to renewable energy. And he's like, SpaceX is plan B. It's like, if we can't fix it, we need a way to get off the planet. It's like, yeah, I don't mind the backup plan, that makes sense. And I think you definitely want that. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket, especially if, like, you can see we don't seem to be changing. But the big thing is going to be climate change. And I think that this is what's so interesting about like the UFO and the UAP phenomenon too. Like, it's displaying like technologies and stuff that could change the planet. And I know,
Everything.
yeah, and I don't want to be one of those guys that's always like, oh well, technology in the future will solve all of our problems like it always has. Because I think that can also be quite like a naive approach to take. Like, oh well, global warming will be fine because we'll figure it out, because we might not. But I think that there is something really interesting in the UFO like phenomena in general that could be linked to all of this, because when you like look at like all the underlying problems for like humanity, a lot of it is people that are lost. A lot of it is people
Yeah.
that are like aren't treated the same as everybody else. Like it's quite hard growing up in like a Western culture to like remember that a lot of people have nothing, because
Absolutely.
because even growing up in a Western culture in like a middle class family, you still kind of have nothing, or you still kind of can see people that are above you too. And I
Yeah.
think everybody always like, when you look at like the average person, they always feel that maybe they could do a little better, or maybe could do something. And this like topic is so profound because it can change everything. It can change how we view ourselves in the universe. It can change our technologies, our approach to technology. Like it just changes everything. And you have people like Nikola Tesla, like from ages ago. I can't remember the exact quote, but he's like quoting about the idea that as soon as we move to like a more open-minded science, there'll be more achieved in like 10 years than there has been in the last 50. And I think that's totally true. And I think we're slowly seeing it with the likes of you and people like promoting it and giving it in a way that is digestible. Because I think that's another big problem. A lot of these reports and stuff, they're not very attractive for like the average person to look at. But
Yeah.
when you can break that report down into like 6 or 7 posts that someone can then, even if they're just sitting at a dinner table, can remember your post and can quote it, that can go on to change everybody at that dinner table's experience, and they might go and check it out afterwards.
No, I totally agree, and I think this is one reason why, when I started the page on Instagram, I was in two minds whether to just do it as a blog or something. But then I thought, you know what? If I put it out on a really popular social media platform, there's a good chance I'll be able to hit that that younger generation who may have not come across it so much before, other than in maybe sci-fi and stuff like that, and then maybe I'll hit that newer generation who will then take it forward way beyond my time and things like that. Because I've got a young daughter, and half of the reason why I do, or even more than half the reason, a lot of the reason why I do what I do is so that maybe one day this world will be sorted out for her lifetime.
Yeah.
I think my life's pretty much done. I don't expect to have a poverty-free world or a famine-free world, but maybe and I know I'm living a pipe dream probably that it's that simple, but if there's any chance of it happening, it may be 50 to 100 years down the line, then maybe my daughter will still be alive.
Yeah.
So, I'm a very, very positive person though in every aspect of my life.
Well, we live in such a crazy time as well, because it really, the lines between like science fiction and reality are like really, really blurring. Like you've got all the stuff going, like it feels like we've moved into another space age, just even with rockets and like going back to the moon and the Mars missions and all of that. And then you've got all these science breakthroughs with like quantum physics and mechanics. Then you've got like all of these quantum computers being built, artificial intelligence, like coming on with algorithms, and it's just absolutely crazy. Then you can take it another step further and have like Neuralink, and you want to connect your brain to the internet and all this kind of crazy stuff.
Sure.
And it's like yeah, the future has never been so uncertain, because there's like so many avenues it can go down, but kind of based off how quick this technology has advanced, you'd kind of hope that it was in a good direction, and probably will be, but you never know.
I agree. And everything you just mentioned there with all those projects, Neuralinks and stuff, and we're talking about white projects, things that are publicly known. And then I don't really like to get into the speculative side of things when it comes to black projects and special access programs. I'd acknowledge special access programs, but you only need to look back to the 70s and 80s with things like MK Ultra and that, and the way that their progression was going with the neurological side of science and stuff. I mean,
all that stuff on like remote viewing and everything really interests me.
Yeah, but we're going back like as old as me. We're going 40 plus years, so there could be certainly things going on in the background now where they're making serious breakthroughs, and it would be nice to see that come across into the white world, and then maybe the advancements will happen quicker than we expect. But speculation and secrecy and governments. and money and
That's the problem with the internet, I guess, too, is like as much information as it has, there's also a lot of stuff on there that just isn't true. And like it gets to a point where like anything can be true. Like there are so many different things you can read on the internet. It's like you're saying, there are like unacknowledged projects that maybe don't exist, but someone could make it up and it could just sound true. And then if they package it in a nice fancy post, then you're gonna think it's true. And if it's because like something that blows my mind is when people, even to this day, like my family's terrible for it. They'll just they'll just read a headline and send it me, or like post it thinking that that's what it is. And it's like, have you actually like read the article? Because it's not what it's implying, kind of thing. And it's like, no, I don't read them. I just kind of share it or something. It's like, don't do that. Let's stop doing that.
Yeah, but if you then times that by the population that reads that article and then believes it, then yeah, it's a dangerous game.
Yeah. And
And
oh god.
I was just going to say, especially in the world of ufology, I mean, it's horrendous, because that's where I, you know, the one slightly negative thing I'd say about Instagram is that people then come at me when I post something. It's not exactly exciting. They'll come at me going, "Well, we know that aliens live in Antarctica, for example." And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so you've watched a documentary maybe that suggests that, and you've taken it to a full formed belief. And then I have the choice of either ignoring it or explaining to them that if you actually go and look, there'll be no cross-reference documents or data or anything to back that up. You're going from a claim to a belief, and I don't have time to do that anymore. Not with
Yeah.
thousands of people. So
Yeah.
I've had to learn a serious lesson there.
I think that's also like the problem with like the algorithm too with social media, because it's like we were saying before, like when people start searching a certain thing, that's all they get shown. So then if you're just even posting like a video sighting or like a newspaper title, they're going to be like, well, my entire feed is pyramids in the Antarctic. So of course that this is true, kind of thing. And it's like, you wouldn't know any different. And even in a time of lockdown, especially when people aren't able to like just socialize with their friends or family, or even be in the office, because like the whole office environment, you still wouldn't bring up those subjects.
No.
But I do feel like this lockdown's changed quite a lot of people, because it's allowed people to like explore their interests a little bit more and not be judged for it. And I think it's gone both ways. It's made a lot of like people quite open-minded and quite just like, whoa, there's so much to learn here. This is going to take me the next 10, 15 years. What have you got to show me, kind of thing. But then there are also the other people that don't really understand it, or get a little bit too radicalized and just be like, well, this is fact because it's on my screen. And if it's on my screen, then it's fact. Like it can't be false.
Yeah, it's crazy, because I see pages on Instagram that are putting out UFO videos and stuff that have got 100,000 plus followers, and they're putting out videos that are fake, basically. Yeah. So every now and again, not very often, I'll comment saying, well, this has been proven, blah, 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 give them the information. And they get quite aggressive about it. And they're like, whoa, hold on a minute. I thought you like were trying to put out UFO information. But what it turns out is they just want the followers, man. They want the clicks, the views, and all that stuff. They're not in it for the real reasons. And it really detracts from the serious work of people that are trying to do credible stuff, you know, in this very, very difficult subject.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot to make people think it's all just ridiculous too, because of the way that it's been packaged to the public. Like,
yeah,
you could spend your whole life doing like research and being really careful with what you release, what you talk about, and then you could accidentally say one thing or get one thing wrong, and everybody's instantly, oh well, you know, this, and this, and you once mentioned this, and now you're just not credible.
Yeah,
and
it's a dangerous game, man.
Yeah.
And that's why I have to do my research and put out information, my viewpoints. And that's the thing, I very rarely put out my viewpoints. I put out the information and I say, this is what I got from doing some deep diving and digging. This is a conclusion that seems to be credible. I don't necessarily agree with it, because if I agree with it, it's kind of like me saying that it's the truth. And of course, there is no truth that is out to the public. So I still have to tread this tightrope of a subject, but do it in such a way where I don't get completely ridiculed in the comments sections of all my social medias and things like that. And yeah, I mean, luckily, I'm still here. I'm still doing okay. So I hope that says something about the quality of my work. But that can all change on a dime with one post that I might get wrong. So.
Well, I got confidence in you, man. I think you'll be just fine.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man.
Well, we're pretty much coming up on time. So have you got anything to promote with Disclosure Team or with your new project that I saw you launch, Max and Vinnie's UAP show?
Yeah, I have a few interviews that I've got locked in, so I'll happily put those out. So this Wednesday, the 14th, which might be already gone by the time this comes out.
Yeah,
but
this comes out on Friday.
Well, guys,
it is.
If you're hearing this on the Friday the 16th, a couple of days ago, I did an interview with a guy called Gunter Hofer. Now, he was an original investigator back in 1994 at the Aerial School in Rua, Zimbabwe.
Ooh.
The sighting of 50 school children, well, more than 50 school children seeing a UFO land there. He was one of the primary investigators. It's a case that's been covered in James Fox's The Phenomenon, but people are still desperate to hear more information. So I'm going to be interviewing one of the primary investigators.
That'll be awesome.
On the same night, I've got Mr. Scott Brown, who is a long-term UFO researcher, runs a Facebook page called In the Field, highly respectable guy. Then when you hear this, in a couple of days, I will be off on holiday. Then towards the end of the month, Friday the 23rd, I'm speaking to Gary Voorhees. He was a radar operator on board the USS Princeton back in 2004 during the infamous Nimitz encounters. So that's going to be interesting. Then on Monday the 26th, I have a UAP Media UK roundtable discussion live on my YouTube channel with Mr. Graham Rundell, Mr. Dave Partridge from Shadows of Your Mind, and Mr. Dan Zetterstrom, aka The Signal.
How exciting.
That is. And then finally on the 30th, I will be speaking to UFO researcher Jane Kyle, aka UFO Jane. She is one of the best UFO researchers coming out of Texas. She runs Texas UFO Sightings and recently featured on the latest Roswell Final Verdict show in the US. So there you go.
Awesome. I'm excited for that UAP Media one. And Dave was the first episode and Graham was the third. So
yes,
those guys are awesome. So shout out to them. And even Andy, to be fair, I think my first 3 episodes, they were all UAP.
Yeah, you had Andy
UK.
from the podcast.
That UFO podcast.
Yeah. Great stuff, man.
They're great guys. So I'm excited for that one. Well, that's awesome. Finally, how can people find you online? Where are you at?
You can find me. My primary outlet has always been Instagram. That is disclosure_team. You can find me on Twitter at disclosure_team_. You can find me on YouTube at Disclosure Team. You can find me on YouTube at Max and Vinnie's UAP show. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And if you're too lazy to do that, I will also put them in the description below so you can go and click through if you don't want to type. But yeah, thank you, Vinnie. This has been a really, really good chat.
Hey, Jacob, it's my absolute pleasure, man. Like I said, I was happy to join you for this because your work has started off on such a high. I'm so happy and I look forward to what you're going to do in the future because I think you're going to go places, man.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's me again. I just wanted to say, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you want to follow us on social media, it's at Strange Times on Twitter and at Stranger Times on Instagram. So head over there and give us a follow to keep up to date with episode announcements and when new episodes are going to be dropping. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to give us a nice review because it helps with ranking and getting the podcast in the charts. And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure you're following us so you can be notified when new episodes come out. Thank you.